Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams was once asked, sort of, Oasis as good as the Beatles? And he said, they're not even as good as the Rutles.
That's a good. You should have that on a T-shirt. Okay, I understand you met.
Actually, have we got this T-shirt?
I have, yes. Yes, it's a wide shot because obviously got.
Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, right, there you go.
Good man. Top thing, Age of reason, age of enlightenment.
Okay, I understand you met John a couple of times, but mainly, or was it once at the Magical Mystery Tour?
Yeah,
Can
John.
you remember the time when you met John, basically? So
Yeah.
just,
I had the opportunity of really sitting down and hanging out with John, but it was at an Apple Christmas party, and I had a 2.5-year-old, nearly 3-year-old son, and there was all this stuff going on with a Santa and a magician and all this thing. And in the other room, we looked around, where's Miles? And I went off and looked for him, and I found him down the corridor in another room, sitting on a Hell's Angel's knee, who was feeding him froth of beer. I said, whoa, what and I looked round, and Yoko and John are sitting on the floor, and he said, hello, how are you? And I said, well, I'm fine, but I'm, whatever. So I didn't get a chance to, and after the Magical Mystery Tour, John was, had his hair all greased back with a leather jacket and whatnot. And this little mammoth jam session went on with the Bonzos and the Beach Boys and George on saxophone. It was a be there moment. Wasn't very musical. In fact, it's about 40 minutes of "Oh Carol," as I remember. But earlier on, Larry had come out to do his tap dancing. He used to come out with a walking stick and whatnot and these false breasts. And so John's sitting on the floor, cross-legged, saying, come on, Larry, show us your tits. We've all seen them.
I guess you really would like to have spent a bit more time with him, and probably in different circumstances.
Yeah, I would. But I mean, I'm sure we would have been, as ex-art students, kindred spirits. I mean, who can't feel a kindred spirit with John? I mean, he's an honest man.
What do you sort of really admire about John and as a person and also as a songwriter?
John is, inventive. He's not going to stay. I mean, the Beatles as a whole, I think, was remarkable. I mean, who's responsible for that? But they never did anything the same. Almost, every track had something new going on. They were so inventive, and I think that was John's nature to be like that. I remember at the time when he was doing the sort of the hair and the bed and whatever, I thought, what are you doing? But, in fact, what else would you do if you're a Beatle and you've got all this media kind of coverage and you're part of a mania? Why not do an advert for peace? And in fact, if with what I'm doing at the moment with my ego warrior movement, I might well, try and, ruttle that stupid idea by having a campaign for honesty, because ego warriors, say yes to capitalism because it creates wealth. We say yes to socialism because it distributes wealth, but we say no to stealing. And we've got to stop the stealing, because you look around the world and it's like, everyone's like a kid and the parents are arguing and you just want them to stop and just do something proper for a while. There's this madness of, planting, palm oil stuff everywhere. Everything is, I call it cognitive stupidity, like widening the M25, just stop it, do something sensible. We all know the writing's on the wall, the reality check is in the post. So let's sort of ease ourselves into something that can make us all happier,
What song is perhaps your favourite of Lennon's, and why?
Oh.
I know there's 100, and I apologise for.
No, you see, this is really lazy journalese. What's your favourite? What's your 10 best moments? Oh dear. Favourite one? Across the Universe is one of my favourites. Here, There and Everywhere, isn't that John's? But I mean, you can't, some of them they both worked on, and I don't think, you can, favourites is so uncool,
Do you want to come in?
Hang on.
That was a no. What period did you really, I mean, as you sort of mentioned, every song was different, and they kind of had different periods of their pretty brief career, really. Was there one particular? Was it the Sgt. Pepper, or was it the Get Back, or was it the early stuff? Was there one sort of period that you kind of liked over the others?
Well, the early records, which is sort of, the immediate appeal. There's something about them, they were either just a bit louder or something, but they had this real appeal. Their music made you smile. But the big song for me that suddenly made me sit up and say, hang on, this is a notch above popular music, was Penny Lane. And the other one, Strawberry Fields Forever, and it was like postcards, and from then on, and of course everybody, when Sgt. Pepper came out, everyone went, wow, one song running into another, this is fantastic, and then I think after that we had Abbey Road, which was great. No, they couldn't do anything wrong. Even Yellow Submarine I loved, because I had young children. It was good, and they just made everyone smile. So I don't have any favourite periods, but Derek Taylor, their press agent, sort of said, the Beatles didn't just catch the bus; they were the bus.
Do you remember where you were? Oh, I think it's your birthday when John was shot. Can you just maybe think we were?
Do I have to? I once did a thing for court television, and I said I'm not going to be part of a montage of people saying, "Where were you?"
Okay. Can you just remember your thoughts, really? Mainly because it's 30.
Well, I'll tell you, I was actually staying with Terry Jones at the time, and that wasn't me. No. Well,
so we're starting again. So.
Yeah.
Roughly, where were you or whatever?
It's going to happen again.
Yeah, so I'm sure.
What we can do is cut away some chair moving. When the awful moment came, I was staying with Terry Jones, and it was my birthday. And I remember coming downstairs and was going to say to Terry, "Hey, it's my birthday," and I found him in the kitchen in tears. I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "They've shot John Lennon," and it just, just disbelief, and then not disbelief, and hollow, just felt hollow.
It was a big public thing, wasn't it? Radio stations just played Beatles music, and I remember. I was at school, going to school, and it was a big thing, wasn't it? It was almost like Diana. But
well,
I know it's a really
no, I know, but I mean the media, especially the mass media, was staggered by Beatlemania, and if anything, they had a glimpse, with Rock Around the Clock and Teddy Boys and the youth, and in fact teenagers. The word teenager wasn't invented until the late 50s, so all of a sudden, they suddenly realise Beatlemania comes, and they realise they've got a huge thing that they can run with. And in a way, that also led to the kind of Diana grief fests, and so it's the downside of the media and the information technology and everything like that. When it doesn't do anybody any favors, but the genuine emotion and outpouring of grief for John. And let's not forget, he wrote "Working Class Hero." That is a fantastic song in the spirit of Woody Guthrie and everything else that that I haven't forgotten about, and that's really what people are about, and that's what the media fails to understand. They look at numbers. They should look at one person at a time.
What do you think his legacy will be?
Never trust a journalist. That's what that's what I said on the court television thing. I said, "You're not going to do this to me, are you? Where were you?" And then they said, "What do you think his legacy is?" And that's what came into my head. I'm sticking to it.
I don't have a problem with that. Over the last couple of years, the Beatles music has been revived. With almost slap bang up to date with the Wii Beatles. Have you seen that one? Do you know what the Nintendo Wii is?
Oh right, yeah.
What do you think? It's obviously great for the younger generation because it's not no Oasis up there; it's the Beatles. What do you think Lennon might have thought about something like this? Do you think he would have been a great pensioner?
I can't imagine John being my age, a pensioner. Haven't sat down and thought about it, but I can imagine he'd be sort of, behaving badly and saying that the young people should get out and do it for themselves and not play these virtual games. This is the frightening thing, that more and more reality is disappearing. Real reality is being replaced by shiny things and smiley faces, and it's dangerous. It's highly dangerous, and I feel driven to actually sort of point out that it is dangerous, and there are other things in life that you should be taking care of. And I'm pretty sure he'd be saying the same. Because, whether it's what old people say about the young, I don't know. But at some point, some of it's got to be right. You can't have all this, pretend stuff and then sort of. Well, look at the way even everything's going online now. You can your car and your VAT or your tax and everything online, and there's no backup. It's a bit like going into Iraq. Power cuts. We're talking about everything. You're looking at total chaos, all because some middle manager has been told he's got a target and he's trying to chop back. And there's no backup, and you've just got chaos. All this chip and pin stuff, is the power cut. The shops don't work. You can't sort of take it away from people. Otherwise, you can have herds of disenfranchised, disillusioned, and diseased mentally, people out there, because, we're only just out of the tree. That's why we get backache, because we've only just getting used to walking on two legs. They're just pushing it. The whole global thing has gone too far, and there's no one's in control of it. And that's why I'm running this ego warrior thing, because it's just in a gentle way. If you remind yourself of being an individual, it's you, and you should take more. Defend your self-esteem, because if you don't defend your self-esteem, you're no use to anybody else, and it's all going to go down the pan. So it's like it's not easy to sort of encapsulate it into a soundbite, but if you like let me say the show that I'm doing now, it's called A People's Guide to World Domination. Well, break it down. People. What are people? There are no perfect people in the world, only us. What is the world? It's actually, the word world comes from Old German and Latin, wir, meaning man, and ald or alt, meaning age. So it's age of man or human existence. That's the world. And that's more like, what we were talking about earlier, reality. And if it comes to domination, that is basically power and control. In the dictionary it says over others, but surely you should have power and control over yourself. And so actually, don't look up domination on Google. You'll get lots of offers for housewives, lonely housewives.
Under Tiger Woods.
Well, yeah. But my favourite story of all time is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. He's in prison on this island for something he hasn't done, and he's beaten up every year on his birthday. And after 8 years or something, the stone moves in his cell floor, and a head comes through, and it's this fellow prisoner, a priest, who's been tunnelling in the wrong direction for 10 years. But he teaches him, he educates him, and what have you. And the memorable line is, they may take away your freedom, but they cannot take away your knowledge. And so it's up to everybody to reclaim knowledge and actually think about how big the solar system is and how small all the atoms and the microatoms and things are, and then look at the rest of it, and it's all hooey.
When we've been talking about the 60s, your face lights up.
Does it?
Which is wonderful.
It's the drink.
Are you pleased you were born when you were born? And you went through what you went through?
I'm one of a number of people my age who should be feeling immensely lucky to be born when they were. I just miss being called up for national service. There've been no wars. The economy was great when I was young. Harold Macmillan was right, and he said, "You've never had it so good." And we were, at college and things like that. And you think, well, I can muck about. What job? I can choose any job I want, And so there was this confidence, and if you like, a kind of, a self-belief in the generation, and at the time, of course, there was a lot of froth in pop music, but there was an awful lot of social glue as well, so looking at things. I mean, The Who wrote really good songs, Ray Davies wrote really good songs, and of course the Beatles, and there's some Americans, Country Joe and the Fish, and Bob Dylan, of course. So, I mean, it was a great time to be young, absolutely.
Where did it all go wrong?
Where did it all go wrong?
I mean, our world now is just so clinical and pretty yucky for our kids, isn't it?
Well, it is.
You've got grandchildren.
Yeah.
I've got a 4-year-old boy.
Yeah. Do you want to come in?
Do you want to come in?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
Sorry.
So
We must be
it's just
good.
a fascinating chat.
Yeah.
Just got to change because I'm nearly going to be. It's nearly time for the doors to open.
Okay.
Is it? Oh, right. Oh, right.
2 more questions.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Love a cup of something hot.
it's 7 o'clock. Yeah, apologies for that. Just a little bit on the Monty Python. Can you recall some good times there that you felt that?
Yeah, Monty Python.
Did you bought the 7th one?
Do you want me to just get the things I
Just
need?
do what you do. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Oh, snuffing
So
up now.
what was the highlight of the Pythons sort of era for you?
Well, I knew the Pythons before they were Pythons because we did a children's show called Do Not Adjust Your Set. We, the Bonzos, the Bonzo Dog Band, were put together by a producer called Humphrey Barclay with Michael Palin, Terry Jones, Eric Idle, and Terry Gilliam came on the second series. We did 26 in all. And the fantastic David Jason and the equally fantastic Denise Coffey. That was it. And it was a great team. And so we made these shows, and then Bonzos went off to America. By the time we came back, the others had hooked up with John Cleese and Graham Chapman. And events happened in America, and we thought, time for the Bonzos to call it a day. 5 years, 3 managers, no holidays. And so I was kicking my heels for a while, and they were, in the middle of the second series, I think. And Eric rang me up and said, do you fancy coming up to the television centre? Our warm-up man is ill. I said, I don't do warm-ups. He said, it's 25 quid. I said, all right, done. So I went up there, and it was a hopeless warm-up, just sang a few songs, that's all. But we went for supper afterwards. And basically, they were going to branch off into albums, and they'd sort of written some songs, and they wanted some help with some music. Literally, we sat down around this big round table in a Chinese restaurant somewhere. And I said, well, what sort of songs have you written? And Eric said, well, Michael's written this thing about agrarian reform in the Middle Ages. So I thought, oh, great, get in there before Motown. And John is always to the point, said, well, what sort of music do you think for that, Neil? I went, reggae? So, I mean, it was made in heaven, the match. We just had a wonderful time, and it was always a wonderful time. I mean, the Pythons could be quite feisty with each other. I mean, Cleese once explained it, so Neil, you've got to realise we have this thing called stick, and no one gets away with anything, and even, writing material, if it doesn't get a laugh at the read-through, it's not in. And so Michael was one of the best at reading from paper, so everyone said, suck up to Michael. Michael, when you read my script, So, but it was good for that. It was honest, and of course, it was groundbreaking in sort of comedy rules. The only downside of it all is they're so brilliant at deconstructing television, the satire and everything else. Hasn't done a bloody bit of good because television's got even worse. I mean, the guy who wrote Network back in 1974 must be spinning twice as fast in his grave, Because 1974, the red light was flashing and the whistles were blowing, saying, corporate television, hey! But look, it's even worse, so...
Well, it's sort of come full circle. We've got the internet now. Television. What's the future?
The future is, well, it's a bit like the past, The future is going to become the past. Because I love infinity. I really, really love the idea of infinity. I can't get enough of it. But we're actually on the exact spot where the past and the future meet. And I think you have to be in the moment. and do what you can in the moment, because no one can plan the future. I mean, literally, you know, the third rock from the sun, everything else is just going on. And, you know, you have to sort of say, well, look at the wonder of it and not the negatives, really. I mean, the glass is half full. The glass has to be half full in order to get anything done. Otherwise, it's all down the pan.
Thank you very much, young man.